Dharme, the personality of religion. Pravadati, thus having spoken. Saha, he. Samrat, the emperor. Vijayasatamaha, O best among the Brahmins. Samahitena, with proper attention. Manasa, by the mind. Vikeda, without any mistake. Pariyachasta, counter replied. Tam, unto him. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, O best among the Brahmanas, the Emperor Parikshit, thus hearing the personality of religion speak, was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply. Please repeat. Sutta Goswami said, O best of the Brahmanas, the Emperor Parikshit, thus hearing the personality of religion speak, was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply. Report with divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri. The statement of the bull, the personality of religion, was full of philosophy and knowledge. And the king was satisfied, since he could understand that the suffering bull was not an ordinary one. Unless one is perfectly conversant with the law of the Supreme Lord, one cannot speak such things touching philosophical truths. The emperor, being also on an equal level of sagacity, how do you pronounce that word? Yeah, but how do you pronounce it? Sagacity. Replied to the point, without doubts or mistake. Om Agyan Timarandasya Nandala Sarakaya Chakshurumiritam Tasmai Shri. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're continuing with the great saga, the meeting of Parikshit Maharaj and the personality of religion, in the form of a bull. It says here, this was not an ordinary bull. I had the great fortune just recently in the Govardhan village to be working with Devata, prabhu, who is used to be in Vrindavan here. And he's taking care of training the oxen. And so it took some time in the morning to work with him. And I have to admit, it was kind of intimidating. Working with such a big animal, a strong animal. And actually, it almost stepped on my foot twice. The first time I didn't, I only had sandals. Just missed me. I was thinking, there was an incident here, I think in the temple years ago. Someone's foot was crushed by a bull, or a cow. A calf? Okay, all right. Sorry, I don't want to create any... Those stories get embellished. So anyway, and at one point I was in between two of them. I was in between, what's that? Oh yeah, I heard. I was in between two of them, and one of them hit me in the rib. And I still feel it a little bit. It wasn't intending to hit me, it was trying to get the other bull. They're just playing. They're just playing. So is so massive, so strong. It's just amazing. And it was really hard to wrap my head around the fact that civilization, as it should be, revolves around, the bull, the cow, and the brahmanas, and thinking how to work with the animals, to have the bull come to the point of, first of all, just to be able to lead the bull with a rope, to get the harness around him, and then to walk them, and then later on to get the yoke on them and have them pull different things. We got them pulling tires with rocks in it. And then, what to speak then of having them plow. Not only that, this is just not the single, but you're having two of them working together. And then they have different temperaments. They haven't, if you get one bull that's not of the same temperament as the other one, it might be very difficult. So putting all that into context, the whole civilization, in terms of production of food, production of sustenance, would require a lot of care, a lot of patience, a lot of attentiveness, just because you're working with an individual. There are some days they don't want to cooperate, some days they don't want to work. So here, the example, the personification of religion is standing on one leg. 3 legs have been broken: mercy, cleanliness, austerity. And these legs have been, in Kali Yuga, such legs have been replaced with great endeavor, work, ugra karma, slaughterhouses, which replace mercy, forms of intoxication. So much industry revolves around it. Regulations, bylaws are being passed. All these things. This is replacing austerity and cleanliness. So much allurements, sense gratification, advertising. Not to speak of darker areas of that. All in the name of advancement of civilization, when this has replaced a very simple, organic, very healthy way of life, which is non-threatening to Mother Earth, which actually nourishes Mother Earth. Devada kept saying, I don't know if Krishna doesn't accept any food that hasn't prepared, any food that wasn't grown from land that was tilled by the bull. I did ask him where I must have read it somewhere, but anyway, we'll ask him. So, but the point is that there's the bull preparing the soil, harvesting the goods from the soil, fruits and vegetables, offering them to Krishna. There's a whole connection. It's all about relationship. I was expressing to Varshana one time how beautiful it was. My sense gratification, just appreciating the beautiful surroundings up at Govardhan. And but he pointed out that really more important than all its beauty is the relationships that are going on. All the living entities have relationships. New Vrindavan is such a wonderful place because we have a lot of facility for that. This brings us to the point of how tolerant the bull is. When being questioned by Parikshit Maharaj as to who put you into this situation, and the bull replied with great wisdom. Such was the nature of his reply that it says here in this verse that just by hearing his reply, Parikshit Maharaj was fully satisfied. That is the nature of transcendental knowledge. Fully satisfies the soul. So the bull replied that, well, some philosophers say it's karma. Some philosophers say it's other living beings. Some philosophers say material nature. And then he put it back to Parikshit Maharaj, and I'll have you decide on that. So, Parikshit Maharaj replies here in the next verse, Rajo vacha dharmam bravishi dharmagya dharmo shivrisha rupadrik yad adharma krita shtanam sucha kashyapi tadbhavet. Translation, the king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. Purport. The devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. It says here that no one is directly responsible. Indirectly, there are many immediate causes. But according to this Prabhupada's statement, there's only one remote cause, and that is the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he does not consider, the devotee does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent. Thus it is by his grace. In case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent, but in case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee as to put him in great difficulty. When there's great difficulty, we see how it's natural for individuals or collectively people will turn to God sometimes and ask for help. Brought this up before when they had the Apollo 13 mission. And they were all out there in space. They were stuck and they didn't know if they could get back safely. So the president makes a call to the nation to pray to God. And then when they safely come back, then they forget God and they start glorifying technology. How they were so great. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. That is the way of accepting a thing, either favorable or unfavorable. Thus for a devotee, the identifier is equally a sinner, like the mischief monger. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. Maharaj Parikshit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was no other than the personality of religion himself. In other words, the devotee has no suffering at all because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Godhead. I'm sorry, personality of Kali. Woo! Well, according to this verse, it's a remote cause. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting my glass. The cow and the bull never placed any complaint, almost done, any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali. Although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one else could understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. So, there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita that says that he who neither rejoices upon obtaining something pleasant or lament upon achieving something unpleasant, who is self-satisfied, unbewildered, who knows the science of God, is understood to be situated in transcendence. So that is the position here of the bull. He is a self-realized soul. And so he was above all dualities and didn't recognize, not only was he a self-realized soul, but he was speaking as a devotee, that he accepted everything as coming from the arrangement of the Lord. The example Srila Prabhupada gives here also Lord Jesus, that yes, Lord Jesus spoke very strongly. He exhibited anger. He defended the principles of religion. He exposed hypocrisy. But when it came to his own treatment, he was the sacrificial lamb. He accepted it without protesting. There are many, many great examples in our tradition also. So we have the example of Haridas Thakur beaten through the marketplace, and Prahlad Maharaj being persecuted by his father, Ambarish Maharaj challenged by Durvasa Muni. Their lives are all threatened, and they didn't protest. They just accepted it as the arrangement of the Lord. I was also reading the pastime of Jad Bharat. It's amazing. I mean, he was, of course, we all know the story where he took birth again in a family of a Brahmana. His father was actually very, very pious. He was a devotee, such great qualities. And Jad Bharat appeared. His father had two wives. From his first wife, he had 9 equally qualified sons. And then from his second wife, he had twins, a boy and a girl. And the boy was Jad Bharat. And in the beginning of his life, he acted as if he was dumb, deaf, blind. And his father was very attached to him and tried to teach him in so many ways. He wasn't really qualified goods for householder life, so his father tried to teach him all these purification processes, tried to teach him the Gayatri. Actually, taught him for 4 months, trying to teach the Gayatri, the Omkar, and the Vyariti, which is like pronouncing the names of the various heavenly planets. Spent 4 months trying to teach him. Couldn't teach him. Show him how to be clean, perform fire sacrifices, none of it. Couldn't do it. Actually, he said, wash your hands after you evacuate. Jad Bharat would wash his hands before he evacuated. But his father never gave up. But time came along. Time waits for no man. Took Jad Bharat's father away. And then the younger wife, she went along with the father and gave up her life. And Jad Bharat was entrusted to the stepmother and the stepbrothers. And although all these sons, they were very, very highly qualified in Brahminical ways. They weren't devotees. They were, it's explained in one of the verses, they were well conversant in three Vedas. I can't remember which one exactly, but those three specific Vedas are dealing mostly with fruitive activity. So being engaged in the pursuit of fruitive activity, they were actually considered no better than four-legged animals on two legs. And they really didn't. They had no concern for Jad Bharat. They didn't try to help him like the father did. They would feed him whatever, broken rice, grains eaten by worms, oil cakes. I can't imagine what oil cakes are. It's something from the deep fryer or something. And they would engage him in all kinds of menial work. He was very strong. Actually, he says that he was very healthy, and despite, I mean, he was so detached from the bodily conception that he could deal with not wearing proper clothes, whether it was cold or hot. So these are all characteristics of individuals who have totally detached from the affinities of the body. Self-realized soul, I mean, is very, very elevated. Prabhupada gives the example in one of the verses that it's like if you're sitting in a car, we've all heard many times, you're sitting in a car, if you're the owner of the car and something happens to the car, you experience a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort because of the attachment. Whereas the passenger, he may not be, he may not feel any discomfort or distress. Might feel a little distress for his friend because he has some attachment to the friend. So it's all about association when it comes to suffering. Prabhupada also gives a beautiful lecture about suffering. He says that devotees don't suffer. And in that lecture he talks about, he mentions one incident where Stalin, former dictator in Russia, in the Soviet Union, that he had an operation on his stomach. And he told the doctors, no anesthesia. They operated on his stomach. And Prabhupada explains how just through training one can disassociate and not experience. And Prabhupada glorifies his disciples in this lecture, just saying how they have given up so much. People are aspiring for all these comforts in life. And his disciples, they were going through so much austerity, even in sickness. So much sickness, they would continue on with their services. And in this way, he was making the distinction between so-called suffering and real suffering. Real suffering is the losing the opportunity to have some devotional service. So Bharat Maharaj, he was on that level. And one night, there was a leader of a dacoit who wanted to make an offering of a human animal. Human is kind of like an animal. And somehow or other, the one that they were intending to offer had escaped. So he told the other one, says, you go find me one, go find him. So then the others in their search for the offering, they came upon Jad Bharat. He said, yeah, he's a suitable character, let's take him. And again, Jad Bharat, he didn't show any resistance whatsoever. They just bound him up, because he was so strong, he could have destroyed, he could have broken his ropes. But they took him along, and they brought him before the goddess Kali. And they cleaned him. He was also very, very dirty. Outwardly, I mean, his effulgence, it says it was very effulgent, but he was covered. His effulgence was covered. So they brought him before goddess Kali, and they cleaned him up with garlands and scents, incense, and fed him sumptuously. So they do that in prisons before they go and send a person to the execution. They give him his last meal. And one of the high priest took up his sword, a very sharp sword. He was just about ready to cut Jad Bharat's head off so that the goddess Kali could drink the intoxicating blood. But they didn't realize who they were dealing with. And this is not sanctioned. Actually, it is not sanctioned even to do it to animals, so what to speak of human beings, what to speak of a self-realized soul, a devotee like Jad Bharat. The goddess Kali, she understood this guy's a great. So she just burst out of the deity form with an effulgence, ready to destroy the whole planetary system. And she grabbed the chopper from the priest, started to chop the heads off of everyone that was there. And she was accompanied by all these demons, and they were all dancing around, drinking the blood, playing balls with the heads. Ghastly scene. So in this way, Jad Bharat was protected because he had taken complete shelter. So we may question, well, why did Jad Bharat not offer any resistance? Is he just thinking, well, Krishna can protect me? That would seem unlikely that he would be thinking that. Why would he want the Lord to serve him? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Why such a great soul would not try to defend himself? I mean, he wasn't the only case. I guess there's some, like we say, well, Prahlad Maharaj, well, he couldn't really defend himself. He was just a boy. Or he could have spoken against it. I was reflecting, yes, Mother? So they're in touch, yes. Mother Vrindavan Palika is saying that the devotees want to please the Lord so much that they're so in tune with the Lord that says, whatever is your wish. If Krishna is dictating to the pure devotee, just trust me. You know? Devotee trusts Krishna. he understands that there's a greater plan. And what he's saying, that Jad Bharat, being a self-realized soul, and realizes that there's a greater plan, and will not interfere with the trajectory of that plan. And that is actually the case, because we hear afterwards that there was a king, Rahugana, right? Rahugana? And this king Rahugana was being carried in a palanquin. And the carriers realized that we needed more help. We needed someone else to help us. So they came upon Jad Bharat, and he looked quite fit to carry the palanquin. And of course, Jad Bharat, we know the story. He didn't want to step on the ants. So every 3 feet he'd be looking to see if there was any ants. And in this way he couldn't keep pace with all the other carriers. And the king started to complain. And the carriers, they were afraid of getting punished by the king. So they said, we got this new guy here and he's just not towing the line. So King Rahugana, he started to speak to Jad Bharat. And he was just speaking sarcastically. Oh, you must be tired. You're doing all the work by yourself. And, you're not very strong. You don't look very stout and healthy. Of course, Jad Bharat was just the opposite. And and being totally disassociated with externals, Jad Bharat just continued walking in the same fashion and disturbing the palanquin. And this time the king started to insult him and threatened him, to punish him in a manner that Jamraj would. And when he finished his tirade, Jad Bharat said, "Oh, king, you're actually right. I'm not very strong. I'm not fat and skinny. Because for the self-realized soul, there's no question of having these designations." And he went on to speak this incredible philosophy to the king. And immediately the king, because the king was actually, he wasn't an ordinary king. He had some great qualities, and he was very attracted to conversations about the absolute truth. And so he could recognize immediately, he recognized the position of Jad Bharat and submitted to him and paid obeisances. And Jad Bharat began to instruct him on essentially the same philosophy that Kapila Dev was instructing his mother. This whole Sankhya philosophy. And the king presented some arguments, because this king was not a self-realized soul. And he said, well, in regards to pain, for example, he says, well, yes, the body experiences pain, and because, we are associated with the body, and therefore we experience pain also. And so how can you say that we don't, the self does not experience any pain? And so Jad Bharat, he didn't waste any time. Just like Krishna told Arjuna, you are speaking, although you're speaking learned words, although you speak learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So similarly, Jad Bharat was telling him, you're a fool. You think you're the king, you think I'm the servant. It's all temporary. I could be the king, you could be the servant, everything is changing. And this pain, you're talking about pain and pleasure and disease and this and that. We have nothing to do with this. We have nothing to do with this. Transcendental subject matter rises above. Prabhupada quotes the verse from the Gita also that all of your studies of the Vedas, if they do not culminate in transcendental knowledge and devotional service, they're simply dealing with the 3 modes of material nature. The Vedas mainly deal with the 3 modes of material nature. rise above these modes, O Arjuna, be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety. And what? Established in the self. The self has risen above all various types of dualities. And Jad Bharat was also, just like Narada Muni, who, when speaking to he was relating his previous life, just to show that he is speaking this knowledge, he is speaking information, but also he can speak from experience. And Narada Muni spoke and describes his previous life. So similarly, Jad Bharat, in order to be able to, just like we were discussing yesterday, when you speak to someone, you can just speak the philosophy, but it may not, it actually may have a counter effect, because a person is not sensing that empathy, that connection. So Jad Bharat started to relate his own history. I was engaged in all these practices. Oh, I was a king. I was all these sacrifices, working towards goodness and so on. And I became attracted. I became a deer. I became so fearful. That's why he chose to remain deaf and dumb, because that fear was good. You don't want association with Maya. We all have practical experiences. You have an accident in a car, or almost drown or something. Sometimes people will never go in the water again. They have a near-death experience. So King Bharat, he could remember his previous life. Jad Bharat could remember his experience in being in the body of a deer. And the whole beginning of that pastime was strongly emphasizing the importance of good association. So he spoke to Rahugana in this way to help clarify his position. And, so we have many examples of the behavior of self-realized souls, comparable here to the bull, who is completely unresisting. By the order of things, Kali Yuga was to make its entrance, unfortunately, and the bull had to suffer such consequences. And to identify, getting back to this verse, to identify for the person being perpetrated, to identify the perpetrator, then essentially we're participating in that association. Well, we're mentally associating. We're blaming. And of course, practically speaking, easier said than done. If someone comes up to me and touches false ego, then the reaction may be to try to defend. Defending is a very difficult position to let go of. Of course, on behalf of others being criticized, then we can speak up on behalf of them. But here the lesson is for oneself. If one is being put into a distressful position, not to try to seek out, not to spend so much time in trying to seek out why this is happening, who is responsible for this, what turn of events has caused this, but rather just try to tolerate and know that it will pass, and understand that Krishna has a plan, and ultimately Not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord. Krishna's allowing it. So I'll stop here. Anyone would like to add anything? Sorry, I went pretty far.
Just one thing, disclaimer, because although you were quoting Devananda, he said that Krishna does not accept anything that's not known by itself. And that flies in the face of the teachings, particularly of Srila Prabhupada. What could be said is that he prefers, and say he much prefers, but to say that he does not accept is erroneous, so I wanted that to be on record, that's all.
I should do more research.
Well, there's nothing to research, probably. Here, you can look it right up. What did Prabhupada say? It's just that it's easy to spread disinformation. So, otherwise, not everything we offer is grown here.
Yeah, Prahlad Maharaj offered poison. Prahlad Maharaj was able to offer even poison to the Lord.
Because he was a pure.
Yeah. So there's a context.
For us, we're through that act trying to become ourselves pure. So, a question. Is philosophy only for adults?
Is philosophy only for adults?
We have examples through the philosophy, I know that. But in a general
well, can I answer with a question? What is the definition of philosophy? I wish I could say, because I was thinking when I was preparing for class, I got to look up that definition again. It was a beautiful definition of it in the Webster dictionary, but I forget it. I didn't look it up this time. I looked it up one time.
The study of the fundamental nature of knowledge. Reality and existence. Especially when considered as an academic discipline.
So, short answer would be no, not for children. Let them play. Let them develop, the trust in your peers.
Also the ability to discern. I'm just asking in terms of how then, this is very high level philosophy actually.
Yeah.
How does that translate to children? For example, what does innocence mean? Why are you, we generally assume children are innocent, and indeed, I can give an example where Prabhupada, I'll tell it in this story actually. Sujana, my sister, was in Vrindavan, assuming Prabhupada heard about her daughter. And it was towards the end of Prabhupada's stay, and he really had these occasional darshans. So there was darshan when she wanted to go. Her daughter and the daughter of another god sister stayed together to play while the parents went to bed. Which was, at that point, everything was within our own campus, so it was still just, a couple of days away. When she got home, the daughter complained pain in her stomach and was feeling it. So she put her on her lap. And that's true. And during this change, the daughter was about it. So very bewildering circumstance. And devotees were running around going for moment until the customary time. And so while they were waiting for the devotees to assemble, this little girl particularly had been very much like a pet for all the devotees, in a nice way. So the paladin was waiting, and it was in front of Prabhu's quarters. The devotees were there waiting to get a party. And Ramchari came out with the garland. And he said, this is from Sri Prabhupada. He said, put it on the garland. And that she should not be put in fire. Rather, she should be just put into the women, because there is no need for fire, which is the purification. She was innocent. So at that point, Sivan, who had been finished with him, and just imagine, she felt completely peaceful. Here, Prabhupada knew about something, didn't know, knowledge, he gave an instruction. So instead of going to the funeral pyre, which is right next to the body and she was describing to me seeing the body was floating and going down and down until all you could see was a little bit of cloth and then you couldn't see anything as they went further. Which would be, in one way, undescribably difficult, but because the order was coming from Prabhupada, she was accepting that, it actually brought her some peace, even though there was undoubtedly great emotion. So here was, I don't remember his age, but he was not yet a teenager. He was innocent.
That explains a photo that I saw just a few months ago, because I didn't know what would be the protocol for a dead child, and I was going through a bunch of photos that Vrindavan Nath had in storage, and they were all sticking together, different apart. And I saw this one photo, and it's a child in the Ganges. Oh, pretty ghastly.
I post that story on our GDC conference. I forget. There was some discussion about what to do about this or that, and I posted that. And I got a message from Dr. Kumaraj. That Brahmachari was me, and I always wondered, what happened afterwards. He was quite disturbed. So anyway.
Also, children, we've heard that the rather than philosophy, they learn by the example of parents and teachers. They pick up like sponges.
So there is behind the question. How do you come to children who are behind? Because philosophy, like you mentioned, I think it was unless there is some connection to empathy, but for example, like a baby who's being pained, and then that pain turns, throughout their life, child.
I don't have any scriptural reference for that, and I'm not a parent. So maybe some of the women who have children could answer that. Anyone? How do you comfort a child who doesn't understand philosophy, or may not understand? We can give the benefit of the doubt. That child may be able to perceive some of that information. Who's to say with a child who may have? Generally speaking, children know that intellectual capacity. Some children may be more advanced than other children. Is that possible?
So we see all these, other words, train wrecked kids who are now adults and some middle age who were drastically harmed within our movement. And we're trying to confirm here true and possibly right. But as a child,
young people, yeah, broken, damaged goods. From personal experience, and this is just a technique, psychological technique that I found very helpful for myself, was to try to find an incident in my life. And I know of several incidents were transitional, had a strong impact, where it created a lot of disturbance and suffering. And first to recognize it, to confront it, meaning try to be in the moment with that, even though it happened 20 years ago. Put myself in the moment with that experience. And now, with the information I've been given over the years, to look at it objectively. Separate myself from the incident. This is what happened. This is how I've responded. And for so long, I've kept responding in the same way to that incident. So rather than keep playing that same game, now I respond to it by separating myself from it